This is a $10 gold pan, and it can do more than just collect the gold out of your creek for you. All you need is a white dog and a Gadsy. But actually some other stuff and some gold. So hang on.
If there is one question I get asked every day on my channel is how do I separate the gold that I collect on the creek from the black sand that I also collect on the creek? No matter how you prospect for gold on a creek, your main goal is to collect everything heavy in your pan or your sluice box, and that includes the black sand and gemstones that come along with gold. There are heaps of different types of black sand, and they all pose one major problem. They're heavy. And that's why most of us end up spending hundreds of dollars on machines like this miller table to separate the gold and black sand for us. But even these can be very finicky. One of the most common machines used to separate gold from black sand is a blue bowl. Blue bowls like this are relatively popular because they're very cheap to manufacture at home. You can make these out of any bowl and some scrap plastic, but you still need to invest in buying a pump and whatnot, and it ends up costing you around $200 to get one of these set up properly. And they work really simply. You fill this with water, the pump gets plumbed in through this little hole here, that pushes a stream of water around the outside, and that centrifugal force that's created within this bowl pushes all the lightest things to the center cone and up and into your collection vessel. And all the gold doesn't have enough energy to walk its way all the way across and up this cone, meaning that in the end, you're left with all of your gold and none of your black sands. But $200 is a lot of money to spend on spinning water. So I got a solution. And this is our black bowl. I need to classify. And I'm going to let past Chris explain why.
Now, it's my job to explain to you guys why density and friction are so important. On a creek system like Reedy Creek here, things sort themselves out due to stratification. Stratification, my furry little friend, is the process of separating things by density. Quartz has a specific gravity of about 2.5. Black sand and gemstones have a range between 4 and 7. And gold is likely the heaviest thing in your creek at 19.3. And that just means 19.3 grams per cubic centimeter, or 7 grams per cubic centimeter for black sand. That means that gold is roughly 2.5 times heavier than tin ore. In gold prospecting, this helps us a lot because if you have pea-sized black sand down to really fine 100 mesh black sand in your creek, if you find a lot of pea-sized black sand, you know you're closer to the gold deposit because that big black sand will weigh roughly the same as what your little pieces of gold will. And so we actually use black sand to track gold deposits down creeks. There's two problems with that. If your gold particle size is really small and your black sand is abundant and larger than your gold, it will be fighting for space in your sluice box. Because a piece of black sand that big will kick out a piece of gold that big from your sluice box. Simply because it weighs more. And the same problem happens when you're doing a cleanup, and that's why classification is so important. If you make everything the same size as your gold's going to be the heaviest thing, and it's going to stay put.
So you may have noticed that my blue pan has turned to a green pan and my classifier has gone from 30 mesh down to 50 mesh, and that's because literally every single piece of black sand went through the 30 mesh, so we know we have to classify smaller. There we go. That's a better result. In a blue bowl, you would use some kind of surfactant like rinse aid or jet dry. This breaks the surface tension of the water and prevents very fine flat gold from floating. That's heaps for that little pan.
It's at this point I need to inform you that I didn't know if this was going to work. I had a few ideas in mind, mostly centered around utilizing a drill to spin the water, and whilst this might work in the right containers, I could not get it to work in a gold pan. I tried various paddles, various sized gold pans, various depths of water, and various amounts of concentrate.
We're going to be using the simplest tool I have, which is a tablespoon, and we're just going to stir from the outside. Well, that's interesting. It is kind of working.
But nothing really worked as efficiently as a blue ball, and so I spent the next 4 hours attempting to sort that out. I knew the principle should work, I just didn't know how, until the next morning when I worked it out.
The best part about experimenting is not knowing what the results are really going to be, and I thought this idea would be very simple and straightforward, but I spent 3 hours last night with multiple pans, depths of water and tools trying to figure this out for you. I tried to drill with various drill bits, brushes, meat skewers, spoons, and a lot of towels to clean up. Some of those combinations I had a mild amount of success with, but the problem is you want consistency in cleanup, because consistency is the thing that ultimately recovers you the most gold. All that means is when you're doing the tilt back and forth, which I've made many videos on how to do it successfully, it's tedious and time consuming, and you have to concentrate. Only doing a teaspoon at a time, that makes it very slow. The best possible combination that I've found so far is this, a 10-inch cheap black plastic pan that has a smooth outside ring. You want to put 1 teaspoon of concentrates in there, which is what I have here. You can do a little bit more than that, but it makes it a little bit harder because of the surface area of this pan. You want to put just enough water to come 1 or 2 millimeters above the top of your soil that you've added to the concentrates. You leave the pan in contact with the table the whole time, and then we start our swirls. You can see straight away it's already separated all this light sand. Theoretically, right now I could suck that up with a snuffer bottle, but we're going to keep going for the sake of it. It's starting to pull the black sands away now. We've got a little bit of gold migration and distribution. Now I found you can just stop, and if you get one that's getting a little too close to your center pile, you just push it back. You already see that we've got a lot of gold separation going on here, and that is great. So what we can do is a little tap that walks that gold. I'm doing the tap in contact with the table. That walks that gold to that outside edge. It actually walks your material that you've washed off to the other side of the pan, as long as you're holding the opposite edge that you're tapping. We are down to almost clean gold. At this point, I take my snuffer bottle and collect all my clean gold. Dump that into a collection container and then repeat the process. This is actually a lot quicker than hand panning it down. Question I know I'm curious about is just to see whether or not we lost any gold and how much we did lose. Blue bowls, millet tables, all cleanup systems lose gold. But luckily, because you're at home doing your cleanup, you can just put this material in a container and rerun it with a different process or with more skill at a later date. We did lose a little bit. 1, 2, 3 little specks there. Isn't too bad. We actually managed to recover about 100 from that in only 3 minutes. And that included me explaining the process as I was going. I want to try this same method using a pan that has inset riffles. Now I found that this smooth outer ring seems to be very important. I want to know if I can get away with having that inset rim there, which seems to change the water velocity. Holy crap, the Minelab pans work really well. That took 1 minute and 23 seconds to get that to that level of cleanliness. That is a really solid technique. The one thing I'm most impressed about using this technique is that I'm able to very cleanly separate, as well as, if not better than a millet table or a blue bowl, that incredibly fine powder gold with very minimal gold migration. You would get just about this much gold migration on a millet table easy, and every time I've checked the tailings, there's nothing in it.